everyone, I'm Tom. I'm going to talk today about space for Canadians because we're all here in Canada. We all want to get involved in space, and it's not so much about what's happening right now in space, but I'm going to give you a bit of a background of where space began in Canada and where we got involved with. Now, of course, it's just a short presentation, so I'm not going to hit everything. I've missed a number of the major things, but I've got some of the key ones that started things off. And I'd actually like you to participate in the presentation a little, some audience participation here.
Woohoo!
So can anybody tell me what happened in 1903? This one isn't strictly Canadian, so
First.
Kitty Hawk, right?
Yeah, so this is the first flight, the Wright Flyer. And of course this started off the whole thing. And a couple of neat facts here. So it's 1903, December. You got Orville and Wilbur flying there in Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. And I mean, it's a pretty crazy looking airplane, right? I mean, the guy's just lying there, moving everything with his hands, right? And the other neat thing about this picture here is, so this is actually the first flight. They captured it on film, and cameras were new at the time. And so they took this picture, and they didn't know that they captured the first flight on film until months later when they finally went back to New York and had it developed. So what happened in 1907?
First Canadian flight.
First Canadian flight. Yeah.
Good guess.
Okay, so that's the Silver Dart. Again, a pretty weird-looking aircraft. The guy's just riding it. It's got a scarf hanging off the edge, just like a regular old pilot. Slightly revised, but the nice thing is it's only 4 years after the Americans. So this is kind of like saying the Americans got a shuttle, and then we got one 4 years later. This is a big deal for Canadians to have flown that short afterwards. And this was the first flight in the British Empire, in fact. Believe it or not, Alexander Graham Bell was involved. We all know him from the telephone. And he had this thing called the Aerial Experiment Association. And so he kind of formed this group, and one of his passions was actually flying. It took place in Nova Scotia. Now, strictly, this airplane was built in the States, and it was test flown in the States a couple of times. But this was Canada's first powered flight. And it happened in Nova Scotia. It was on the ice, and they had people skating around, pushing it on skates. So, you know, a cool Canadian little factor with the Silver Dart. Now, 1957, we're jumping quite a while here. What happened in 1957? Sputnik. In particular, October 4th, 1957. That's not what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, I don't know, wait, that came in the 40s. Never mind.
Yeah. That was the unveiling of the Avro Arrow. And so this was an advanced aircraft made by Canadians. Fly-by-wire control, so it had some sense of controlling, not like the Wright brothers and the first Canadian Silver Dart flyer. You didn't have to push an aileron and push a flap or anything like that. This one you could move a stick and it would allow you to fly. So it was pretty advanced for its time. It had missile systems, so you could have weaponry, and it could hit Mach 2, or it was rated at Mach 2. I don't know if they ever actually hit that. They broke several speed records, so we were leading the pack there. It maybe wasn't the most advanced aircraft of its day, but it was among the top couple, which is really great. Unfortunately, it was of course canceled a little while later. Now, what else happened in 1957? Yeah, Sputnik. And the strange thing is, the day they unveiled the Avro Arrow was the same day that the Russians launched Sputnik. So some people say that this is one of the causes that the Avro Arrow was canceled. The attention was going to space, to intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. There wasn't really a need anymore for a fighter aircraft, and so there was a lot of discussion about whether we needed these advanced flying machines, whether you could really catch anything. If you could get to space, could you catch it with an aircraft? So that was kind of the nature of what was going on at the time. What happened in 1959? Pardon me?
Gagarin?
No, that's not what I'm looking for. So this was actually when the Avro Arrow project was canceled. And as a result, 25 Avro engineers went directly to work at NASA. This is the only time NASA's ever done it. They came up to Canada, they grabbed 25 of these engineers that are soon to be out of work, and they paid for all their expenses to move down to Kennedy Space Center to work there. And of course, 7 of them followed a year later. And this is a big deal because that many highly qualified flight engineers and aerospace engineers, that's hard to come by. Right? You don't just roll over and find them where they're at. This was a magical moment for NASA to find these people. You could say that Canada helped put a man on the moon as a result. It may have happened, it may not have happened as quickly, but we had a direct involvement. Some of the Canadian engineers actually had reasonably high roles in the Apollo program as well. 1962.
That would be good.
That was Alouette 1. Yeah. So this was Canada's first satellite, and believe it or not, we were the third country in space. So Canada's been there right from the start of flight, right from the start of space. Alouette 1 was of course launched by our friends at NASA, setting the ionosphere, which I guess was pretty important for future satellites, as this was the first one to be in that orbit. And the name John Chapman might ring a bell to some people. He was the director of this particular project to get the Alouette 1 up there. And the Canadian Space Agency headquarters in St. Hilaire is named after him, the Chapman Canadian Space Agency. 1984. So we're jumping again ahead. Yes, Will and I were born that year. Yeah, and maybe others here, I don't know. But actually, Will and I were alive before this happened. Mark Garneau, our first astronaut. So he went up. He was one of the first set of astronauts that was selected, and they've since done I think 2 other selection processes. But he was our first, and we actually had a chance to talk with him as a Space Society several years ago. He said that the one thing going through his mind as he went up, it wasn't I'm going to get to look in space or anything. He was thinking, don't screw up. This is Canada's chance. This is our chance to get up there. Don't screw up. And, of course he was nervous. But if you look on some of the old CBC archives, you can watch some of their videos. There's a great video of the CBC. I wish I had it here, but the CBC people, they went down to Kennedy, and they're waving at him from behind the lines. He's walking towards the shuttle, and of course, good old Mark Garneau, he still answers every question they ask. He's about to jump on a spaceship, be shot up, and he's saying, yeah, it's all right, I'm fine. I said, how did you sleep last night? He's like, I slept well. And he's such a friendly guy. It's a truly Canadian thing for him to have gone up and reacted the way that he did. 1996.
Where did Bond die?
Not I'm looking for. I'm not sure what year that was. This was when the X Prize was announced. It was, of course, won in 2004. But 96, it was announced. And we had 2 Canadian teams for the X Prize. The one on the left here is the Canadian Aero. That was out of London, Ontario. And the one on the right here, that's the Da Vinci project out of Toronto. So we had 2 of them, even just in Ontario, we had 2 teams working towards the X Prize. Of course, the Ansari X Prize was to get a privately funded and built spacecraft up 100 kilometers and do that twice within 2 weeks with 2 passengers. And that way, in and of itself, trying to spur the private space travel movement. So Canada was involved in that. We have a private space presence, and these 2 companies have since merged, and hopefully something big will come out of them. Now we don't know just yet. They're going through space now, but nonetheless, Canada is still very much involved in the private space industry. I think that's all I got for today. But what I hope that you got from my brief presentation, I've missed RadarSat, Canadarm, all these other big events, but Canada's been there right from the start, and of course the future is you and I.
Right.
We can do it. We can get involved in the private space business, the private space industry. We can go to Mars, and it's up to us to make sure that Canada stays part of the forefront of that technology. Thanks.